On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers lost? Yeah, we'll talk about it. Their 12-game winning streak snapped at the hands of the Indiana Pacers on Sunday night at home. What went wrong? Well, offense, defense, and a little bit more. We'll do all that on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure you tell a friend about Locked On Cavs as well. Make sure they subscribe. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me right now. Click that notification bell and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Of course, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode, of course, sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, download the app, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Also, Locked On Cavs now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter, your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage straight to your inbox every day. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Cavs newsletter. The Cleveland Cavaliers fall to 33-5 on the season on Sunday night as they lose to the Indiana Pacers 108-93. This was probably their worst performance that they've had so far this season. Offensively, it was an off night. We will talk about what the Pacers did to kind of force the Cavs into an off night. Defensively was certainly the tale of two halves. In the first half, I thought it was good. In the second half, I didn't think it was very good. We will talk about that coming up a little bit later in segment number 2. But I want to start with offense because that is the thing that, as odd as it sounds here, I don't know that the Cavs could actually control what happened offensively. Now, part of it they could. I don't think they did a very good job taking care of the basketball. In that third quarter in particular, they had 7 turnovers in the third quarter that led immediately to 12 points for the Pacers. So Indiana did a really good job of capitalizing on those opportunities, but this was also sort of a night where the Cavs just missed shots, and they have been throughout the entire course of the season the best offensive team in the NBA. They've been the best team on 2-pointers. They've been the best team on 3-pointers. They've done great all season long, and they had a stinker. It happens on that end of the floor. Now, the Pacers did some things that are worth talking about that took them out of their comfort zone, but I still don't think the Cavs did a bad job of generating quality looks. It wasn't the best job that they've done at creating really good looks for players in comfortable spots, but it's not like, man, the Pacers did a ton to take away any good looks that the Cavs could get. It wasn't some defensive masterclass by Indiana. I think it was more the Cavs having an off night offensively than Indiana having a really strong night defensively, aside from that third quarter. But what the Pacers did that I really do think changed this game was they started to press the Cavs for 94 feet. They put pressure on the ball as soon as it was inbounded. There was no freebies. There was no ability for Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Karis LeVert, whoever had the basketball in their hands to walk up the floor. Really, the only guy that the Pacers allowed to walk up the floor was Evan Mobley when he was playing center, because as you can imagine, pressing with Thomas Bryant playing center, probably not the best defensive strategy. That's asking to get beat. So that's kind of the one time where the Cavs could walk the ball up the floor was if Evan Mobley was doing it, because Indiana's guards did a good job of sticking with Donovan Mitchell, sticking with Darius Garland, wherever those guys went. And I do think that was something, and I asked Darius Garland about it afterwards, and he said the Pacers tried to speed them up. And I thought that was interesting phrasing, because yes, when you're pressing an opponent the way that Indiana did on Sunday night, you want to speed up the decision-making process of the opponent. That is Indiana's goal there. They want to force the Cavs into making bad decisions, and that worked. They had some careless turnovers. There was the one pass Donovan Mitchell threw to George Yang that got picked off. It was a lazy pass. It was a pass that he should not have thrown, and it immediately led to 2 points for Indiana. So when Garland says that the press is something to get them to speed up, I find that interesting, because what I do think it does, while yes, it speeds up some of the decision-making process, it leads to at times some panicked decision making, and that is obviously a big issue. What I think it more so does is slows the Cavs down. And that's going to sound a little bit weird and not contradicting what Darius said because he's right. But I also think it gets the Cavs out of their offense and they have to work harder to get into their offense, which leads to them getting into it later on in the shot clock. So I think it does a good job, oddly enough, of both speeding the Cavs up and also slowing the Cavs down. And I thought that was one of the big issues, is that they couldn't find any rhythm offensively in that second half. And the Pacers do deserve a good chunk of credit for that. Now, the Cavs, I think, did do a good job. Still, despite that, they did a solid job, I think is probably a bit more appropriate to say, of generating good looks, not great looks, but good enough looks. Like there were a few threes, like a couple that Sam Merrill missed come to mind where he could have checked the wind before he shot it. It just doesn't go down. And teams are going to have nights like that. I'm thinking of one in particular that Dean Wade had where he could have stood there for 3 seconds and would not have been guarded. Shot just didn't go down. It was one of those types of nights. And that, to me, is not a big deal. But what I do think you look at is, okay, now how do you combat this? Because if one team, so the Cavs, because of how good they have been, when another team sees exactly what Indiana did to get them out of their comfort zone, they're going to do their best to copy it if they have that type of personnel. Not every team can do this, but other teams are going to see, hey, the Pacers had success getting the Cavs out of their comfort zone. Here's how they did it. Can we do this as well? Can this be something that slows down the Cavs' offensive attack? So what the Cavs will then need to do now, because they have seen, I think, over the last couple of weeks, some, I don't know if elevated ball pressure is the right way to term it, but we've seen defenses extend out how far they want to put pressure on the Cavs ball handler. Like you saw it with Golden State. We saw it with the Thunder a little bit on Wednesday night. We saw it with the Raptors, I thought, too, on Thursday night. We see teams start to defend the guards for the Cav a little bit further away from the basket. That is a difficult thing to do, but if you have the right personnel, what it does is it forces other guys, Evan Mobley, maybe Jarrett Allen, depending who's on the floor, George Niang, Dean Wade, to become playmakers, when ideally for the Cavs, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are the guys that are the playmakers setting the table for this offense. But when you extend the defense the way that we saw the Pacers do on Sunday night and the way that we've seen some other teams do recently, that becomes something that, okay, how do you solve for that? And that's going to be the next step for this Cavs team. I do think that, a big part of this game was they missed shots offensively. That is something that, yes, Indiana deserves credit for what they did, but also the Cavs played their worst offensive game of the entire season so far. So coming into Sunday night, the worst offensive game the Cavs played was their second loss to Atlanta. So think back, they played Atlanta the night before Thanksgiving, and then they played Atlanta in afternoon the day after Thanksgiving in Atlanta. That game in Atlanta, the Cavs had their worst offensive rating of the entire season. It was really bad. Their offensive rating that day was 98.1. So the Hawks held them to 98.1 points per 100 possessions. Their defensive rating, or their offensive rating, on Sunday night against Indiana was 94.9. So they were basically a full 3 points worse per 100 possessions against Indiana on Sunday night than they were in their previous worst game of the season. So that just speaks to how bad this game was. And I also think that this speaks to how much of an outlier this game was for the Cavs. So the Cavs have had, I think it's probably fair to say, they've had 2 bad offensive games. This was one of them, and the other one was Atlanta. Their next worst offensive game was actually December 30th in Golden State. Think back to that game. They had a third quarter avalanche, but they played terribly in the first quarter on offense. The third quarter, they went in the avalanche. They're up by 25. Game was over. And they weren't able to summon that tonight, but that was an offensive rating in that game of 107.6. And then the next worst was that win in New York early in the season where Darius Garland goes nuts in the third and fourth quarters when they came for the Cavs. That offensive rating was 112.2. So those are their 4 worst offensive performances of the entire season. Why is that important? Because think to that 4th worst one I just mentioned against the Knicks. 112.2. 112.2 points per 100 possessions in their 4th worst game. that would rank 16th in the NBA in offense for the full season. If the Cavs played that game every single night, they'd essentially be right in the middle of NBA offenses. So I do think that speaks to just how dominant they have been on that end of the floor. And they just had an off night. Like, I don't think that anything the Pacers did is unsolvable for the Cavs. I don't think that there should be some long-term concerns the way the Pacers defended the Cavs. I do think that Cleveland did a pretty good job. Not great, but good job of generating shots. And sometimes guys are going to miss. Maybe you've heard this saying before. It's a make or miss league. And on Sunday night, the Cavs missed more than they made. They had their worst shooting percentage from three, I believe, on Sunday against the Pacers. It was not something to be proud of. And you know what? That's going to happen. When you shoot 26% from three, even if you're not a team that shoots a ton of them, the Cavs don't take, the most threes. They took 41 threes on Sunday night. That's not some overwhelming number. But when you shoot 26% from deep, unless you're a very, very, very low volume team, that's going to be an issue. You're going to struggle to win games. That's what happened to the Cavs. Now, the thing that concerned Kenny Atkinson more than offense, well, that was defense. We're going to talk about what went wrong on that end next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate College Basketball HC. I want to take a moment to introduce you to a brand new mobile game that I'm really excited about. What is it? Of course, it is Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, we've all dreamed of being a head coach before, right? Like, I can do better than that guy. Well, maybe you could. Here's your chance to prove it, because you can step into those shoes in Ultimate College Basketball HC, control every detail, every facet of your program, recruiting players, hiring a coaching staff. You need help. You can't do it alone. Kenny Atkinson doesn't do it alone. You can't do it alone. You need help on the coaching staff, overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals. Yes, NIL is in this game, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to drop offensive plays, set your strategy. And what I do think is really cool about this, the way you play in specific games doesn't only affect that game. It doesn't only affect that season. It affects the shape of what the future of your program looks like at your school. And that's a really cool thing. That's a really important part of this too, because if you're not controlling all of this, if you're not having an impact on the future, what's the point? But here you do. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach. And of course, if you do well, lead your team to glory. So here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use promo code Locked On CBB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. That's Locked On CBB, LOCKEDON CBB, inside the game store. Free boost for your program. Perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. You might need a little bit of help at the start. This will do it. To download the Ultimate College Basketball HC, just visit ultimate-cbb.com. That's ultimate-cbb.com, or look it up in any of the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. It is my go-to ticket marketplace. It should be your go-to ticket marketplace. I love going to live events. I went to a Cavs game, obviously, on Sunday. Now I didn't use Game Time because I have a credential, but I know people that did go to the Cavs game, and I know how they got in. They pulled up the Game Time app. They said, hey, that is a great deal. The Cavs have a 12-game winning streak. RIP to that. But I want to see if they can make it 13. They couldn't, but I have friends that were able to go, and they were able to watch that disaster of a game for the Cavs in person, but they were happy because they had great seats, all thanks to Game Time. Like I said, it's my go-to ticket marketplace. It should be your go-to ticket marketplace as well. And one of the things that they do is they make it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with the new feature, Game Time Picks. What Game Time Picks does is it filters out all the fluff. We don't want fluff. We just want the good stuff. That's what Game Time Picks does. So you only see the incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste your time searching through the thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets that are available. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple, on Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review as well. Defense was the bigger issue for the Cavs on Sunday night than offense. Talked about how it was an off night, and those things happen on offense. They don't need to happen on defense. There can be nights, sure, where opponents are just shooting the lights out. That's going to happen because these guys are really good and they're really good shot makers all across the NBA. Every team has guys that are capable of getting hot at any given time. I don't think that's what happened with the Indiana Pacers on Sunday night. I thought the Cavs' defensive effort, particularly in the second half, was poor. Now, in the first half, I actually thought it was pretty good. I thought that what they did on defense in the first half was okay. It made me think, okay, well, the Cavs don't have it going on offense. It's not a great night. They had a good second quarter offensively, but overall, not a good night so far. But they held Indiana to 40 points. They'll probably find a way to win this game because they're playing good enough defense, even if the shots aren't falling. Even if they only scored 19 points in the first quarter, they held Indy to 21, and then they held Indy to 19 in the second quarter. That was a great defensive effort. And then the second half happened, and that defensive effort was not nearly the same. The Pacers shot 61% from the floor in the second half. Cavs allowed 68 points in the 24 minutes after halftime. Now, how did this happen? Was it all Indiana just absolutely carving up the Cavs defense? No, I do think a good chunk of this was because the Cavs got a little careless with the basketball, particularly in that third quarter where they had 7 turnovers, and that led to a lot of easy looks and easy buckets for the Pacers. And that was something that I do think that the Cavs kind of let snowball, where they were struggling on one end of the floor. And one of the things you can control, even if shots aren't falling, is you can control what your defensive effort looks like. And you can, to an extent, control how good your defense is playing on a given night. Again, there are nights where teams are just going to be hot and there's nothing you can do about it. But I didn't think Sunday was one of those nights. I thought that this was a night where the Cavs' defensive effort was not good enough. Indiana shot 70% in the second half on 2-pointers. That's not a number that is championship caliber for a team that has championship aspirations, for a team that has been the best team in basketball for essentially the entire year, has had the best record in basketball for the entire year. That's not the type of defensive effort that's going to be able to get it done. The Pacers created a ton of points off turnovers. They had 10 fast break points, which is exactly where they thrive. I don't think that the Cavs did the best job of getting back defensively in transition. And that's a big problem against this Pacers team. And I do think what that ultimately did was that gave Indy a ton of confidence, because this is a team that, they're not a great defensive team, but they've been much better lately, to their credit, but they really stepped up against the Cavs. And then even after having a poor start, and then Tyrese Halliburton was ruled out at halftime, did not play a second in the second half for Indy. This should have been an opportunity for the Cavs to be able to clamp down defensively and make life really difficult. But instead, the Pacers were able to get going in transition. They were able to get going off some stops, off some turnovers, and getting some easy looks. And I thought that built a ton of confidence for Indiana, because you look at some of the shots, particularly that Andrew Nembhard was making, like he banked in a 3 from the left wing. I believe he had a circus layup in the fourth quarter. It's just like stuff that, okay, does that happen if confidence isn't built earlier on in the second half by a lot of the sloppy offense that the Cavs played? So no, I don't think that defensively the effort was good enough. And anytime you allow a team to shoot over 60% and a half, the defensive effort could be better, with the exception of just maybe one guy getting absolutely red hot. But to shoot 70% from beyond the arc, or from inside the arc, and 47% from beyond the arc, that's an issue. And the Cavs are going to have another night like this where they play really poorly offensively, or maybe they don't even play poorly offensively. They just miss shots offensively. Like, go back to that Atlanta game that I brought up a little bit earlier on in this show, that previously was their worst offensive performance. And thinking about that game, I didn't think they played poorly. I just thought they missed shots. And tonight, they didn't play great offensively. They missed shots too, and that's part of the game. But there are going to be more nights like that. They're probably not going to happen all that frequently, because this Cavs team is really, really good. They are a juggernaut offensively, but they are going to have games where they miss shots. They are going to have games where they just don't have it going on offensively. But what championship teams can do is find ways to win through that. Now, the Cavs have done that before this season, because I brought up their other 2 of their 4 worst offensive games. I brought up the next 2, and they've won those games. They beat Golden State in Golden State. They beat the Knicks on the road. Really, the next loss that they had was not because of offense. Their loss to Miami was 116.5. Their other loss to Atlanta was 117. Like, the offense was not the issue there, it was the defense. But when it compounds the way it did on Sunday night, that's when it becomes an issue. When instead of, okay, we're not playing well offensively, let's go get stops and let's really make this a game where maybe it's the first to 95 wins. That's not what today's NBA is. That's not what the Cavs are this year. This was the first time they didn't score 100 points in a game. But maybe that becomes, let's make this a game where the first team to 95 points wins the game. The Cavs couldn't do that because they did not play well enough defensively. And that is, I think, what the bigger issue is. Now, we will get a chance to see how the Cavs respond to this. And I think that is the best part of this loss for them. I'll talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone. And before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. And as your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few cups of coffee, that's not that much. You get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. And right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. openphone.com/lockedonnba. LOCKEDONNBA for 20% off for 6 months. openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with other services, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. The best part about this loss for the Cavs is that now we get to see how they respond to it against the same exact team. We've already had one of these situations earlier in the year. It didn't go well. And I do think part of that not going well was the day before Thanksgiving and it was the day after Thanksgiving. That's not exactly the best time to have a back-to-back between two teams, but this is different. There's nothing going on in between these two things. The Cavs will be able to kind of see, okay, what went wrong on Sunday night against the Pacers and how can it be fixed? And that is one of the things that I do think we'll see. What can Kenny Atkinson do? Like, this is a good test for him. This is not some declarative test for him. I think he's done enough that even if they don't look good on Tuesday night or don't win the game on Tuesday night, it's not some declaration on who he is as a coach. But this is a chance for him and his coaching staff to be able to look at everything that happened in this loss and say, okay, here's how we can combat that. Here's how we can maybe alleviate some of that ball pressure that the Pacers put on them. Those are the things that I do think we should be watching for when these two teams play again on Tuesday night. I think that is something that to look for. And it'll be, what type of response do they have? Because they've won 33 games. They're 33-5. And I know that there were some people out there that were panicking, that were very upset with the way the Cavs played on Sunday night. And it's not a big deal. This game in a vacuum is not a big deal at all. Every single team, all 30 of them, will have games like this. All of them throughout the course of the season. It happens. The Cavs will probably have another game like this throughout the course of the season because they play 82 times, and it's impossible to play your best basketball 82 times a year. It's not possible. The 73-9 Warriors did not play their best basketball in every single regular season game. It does not happen, and the Cavs losing this game is not a big deal. Now, can they fix what went wrong? I think that's the next thing to watch for. Do they look differently offensively? Are they able to generate better shots on the offensive end of the floor on Tuesday than they did on Sunday? Again, The offensive shot quality was good. It wasn't great. We're used to seeing the Cavs generate great shots. They generated good shots. The good shots are fine. It's not championship quality. We've seen them be a championship caliber offense all season long. That wasn't the case on Sunday. Is that what it looks like on Tuesday? How do they come out and look defensively? How do they look in the third quarter in particularly? Because in the first half, listen, shots didn't fall again, but defensively, the effort was good for the first 24 minutes. And then they came out at halftime and they looked like a different team. What does the third quarter look like? What does the start of the game look like? How do they look on defense? I think that's going to be the thing to really focus in on, to really pay attention to when these two teams play again on Tuesday in Indianapolis. I think that'll be a really interesting thing. I think it'll be cool to see how Kenny Atkinson can kind of counter some of the things that the Pacers did. Again, the ball pressure is the thing that really stuck out to me. Does he have an answer for that? Or is that going to become a blueprint that teams are going to try and emulate? I think this is an opportunity. If the Cavs come out and just do what they're capable of and smoke the Pacers on Tuesday night, then it's really going to be a non-issue. If they struggle again offensively, I think that game on Thursday in OKC might look different than the game last Wednesday did against OKC in Cleveland. So we'll see exactly what that looks like. I will be in Indianapolis for this game. So if you're a Cavs fan and you're at whatever your arena now is called, I don't think it's Baker Life Fieldhouse anymore. Maybe it's Gainbridge Fieldhouse, I think it is actually. So if you're a Cavs fan and you're there and you listen and you see me on the concourse, say hi, but I'll be there covering the game, just trying to cover this team best way I possibly can. And the best way you can help me do that is by subscribing to this podcast anywhere you find it, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Like I said earlier, drop us a 5-star review, be a friend, tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button for me, click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. We'll see how they respond, but I'll be back before that right here on Locked On Cavs.